State Representative Manny Rutinel, you grew up in República Dominicana, and after that you went to school in Florida and ended up in Colorado while you were working as a lawyer with Earth Justice. Share what those life experiences prepare you for the important role you have as the Colorado State Representative, House District 32.
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you so much, Rosanna, for having me here. I really appreciate it. Like you mentioned, I grew up in many different parts of not just the country, but different countries as well. I was and am the son of a single mother, and she brought us from the Dominican Republic when I was 6, and we bopped around different parts of the country in California and Florida while she was looking for better economic opportunity. And so that really informs the sort of things that I prioritize for myself and for the communities that I represent, that have a very similar working class background, that have very similar air and water issues that I experience in different environmental justice communities growing up. And so when I think about my priorities and who I am and what I represent, it's that fight for working families and for environmental justice that I experienced growing up.
Since you are mentioning environmental justice, I just want to mention the Suncor fine that recently happened last week and that was announced to the community. And this got, different feelings and different opinions. What's your personal opinion on the fine that Suncor just got and the money that's going to be used to contrarrest the problems that this industry brings to the community?
Yeah. Well, like you mentioned, Suncor was recently fined by CDPHE to the tune of about $10 million, which is a lot. It's probably the largest against a single polluter in Colorado's history. But the sad reality is that Suncor has made billions of dollars in profit off the backs of communities like those in Commerce City, who I represent. And so, although I think it's great to hold corporate polluters accountable to this extent, I think we can do a lot more, and I think we have to in order to protect these communities.
What do you see as the most important issues besides the environmental issue, as the challenges that your constituents, that's a hard word for me to say, constituents have to face on a daily basis?
Yeah. Well, my district, House District 32, represents Commerce City and a little bit of unincorporated Adams County that surround Commerce City. And these areas are Latino working class areas. And when I think about the issues that these communities face in particular, besides the environmental justice concerns, it's economic justice issues. The affordability issues across the state, and in particular in areas like mine, is front and center for so many families. And so I think inflation is a top concern for a lot of my constituents. The price of food, electronics, housing. I think these are the things that my constituents in particular are asking of me to fight for.
Just this morning, you were at the Capitol fighting for affordable housing. More concretely, the Housing Bill HB 241007, which represents a significant shift in Colorado's approach to housing policy by prohibiting local governments from enforcing residential occupancy limits not based on health and safety. Could you elaborate on how this bill was developed and what you see as the most immediate impact on Colorado communities once it is implemented, if it passes? Because it seems like you are happy, huh? You had a positive outcome this morning.
Yeah, we certainly had some positive developments today that I'm excited to share more about. You mentioned, or you asked about, where did this policy come from? Unfortunately, we are in the midst of a housing affordability crisis. Folks across the state are suffering at the extent of rising rents and housing costs. And what we as legislators have decided to do is prioritize this for this incoming legislative session. And so we're proposing a series of policy solutions to help address the lack of affordable housing supply across Colorado. One of those proposals is the one that I'm championing, and it's about preventing cities across the state from imposing arbitrary and discriminatory occupancy limits that are based on whether you are related to the person that you want to live with. A few cities across the state say you can only live with that person if they're related to you. And that is unjust, it's discriminatory, and it causes a lot of affordable housing options because we are limiting the amount of affordable housing supply. And so it's a very simple bill, but it has a potential to have very large consequences in terms of expanding the amount of affordable housing.
This bill aims to alleviate the housing crisis by removing arbitrary occupancy limits, potentially allowing more people to share housing costs. And given the diverse economic backgrounds in Colorado, do you anticipate that this change will affect the housing market, particularly in terms of rental prices and housing availability?
Yeah. I think as soon as we end these very discriminatory occupancy limits, we're going to see a large increase, hopefully, in the affordable housing supply. Right now, there are rooms in Fort Collins, Boulder, Denver, etc., that are empty. We have empty rooms, and people want to fill them with friends or distant family members like cousins who may not share your same last name.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, they can't because the city says you are not allowed to live with more than 2 other people who aren't related to you. And as soon as we pass this bill, I think we can anticipate a large increase in housing affordability.
With a considerable Latino population in Commerce City, you mentioned, I think it's more than 50% of Latinos living in Commerce City, many of whom are renters facing affordability challenges. How do you believe that HB 24-1007 will address the specific needs of these families?
Yeah. So Latinos, we like to live not just with our children, but also sometimes with our parents, our aunts, uncles, cousins, etc. We like to live in multi-generational houses. And there's a lot of good with that. You get to have caretakers for your children.
El tío, la abuela, el primo, el hermano,
That's right.
la abuelita.
Exactly. And so because of that, I think that Latino communities in particular are set to benefit from a policy like this, where now you'll be able to live with distant family members or maybe friends that you are close with, or maybe new friends, so that you can share the costs of housing. And that's what this bill is all about.
Finally, as a representative for House District 32, what initiatives or policies do you believe are crucial, besides the one that you are chasing, for fostering economic growth and improving the overall well-being of the community, especially around health?
Yeah. I think there are many opportunities across health and economic justice and environmental protection that we can push for. Some of my policies that I'm bringing forward this incoming legislative session include not just this housing affordability bill, but also this large environmental justice bill that will help protect communities, specifically like Commerce City, that has been the victim of a lot of corporate pollution across the many decades. What this bill will do is allow for these communities to have local control over increases in emissions or permits. It'll allow for somebody to be hired by the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment so that they may regulate and put in place new regulations associated with petroleum refineries like Suncor, and also provide for a rapid response team to be able to report out to the community whenever there is an issue, and as well as cumulative impact analyses. So figure out what is the problem, what is the scope of the problem, what are the opportunities, how can we coordinate across different agencies to be able to protect these communities in particular. So that's one policy that I'm really excited about. And there's a few others that are tackling things like economic justice, public health, and just general well-being.
This last week, Suncor was fine, but also at the same time, we had a special visit from activist and actress Jane Fonda. She came to Commerce City to visit and to see the people who are experiencing living there with toxicities and, struggling because of the environmental issues. Do you think that in your lifetime you will be able, because she's 90, more than 90 years old, and she's still fighting the fight, do you think there will be changes that we will move towards a sustainable, energy in your lifetime?
Yeah, there's very little question in my mind that we're going to move towards a more sustainable and just future for our environment and our public health. The question is when. And the reason why I think that it's going to happen is because solar, wind, and other renewable energy sources are going to be not just cleaner and better for our public health, but also cheaper. And so it's a matter of when we're going to change. And what I'm trying to do is make sure that we put the right incentives in place to help us ease into those transitions so that folks have the opportunity to take advantage of this new economy, of these new sources of electricity and energy, so that we aren't left behind. And so that's what I'm trying to do. So for me, in terms of a sustainable, just transition, it's not a question of if, but when.
How can people get in touch with you? How can the young people, especially because they are the most affected by climate change and the most active, can reach out to you?
Yeah. Well, any member of Colorado or the community is able to reach out directly to me through my email, and that is at manny.rutinel.house@coleg.gov. They can also find me on social media at Manny Rutinel. That's MANNYRUTINEL. And I would love to hear from the community. What are the issues? What are the opportunities? What are the ideas? And especially from young people that are not just going to be the ones affected most by climate change, but also the ones that are most affected by things like air and water pollution, and probably a large reason why our schools are failing and our kids are falling behind. And so I'm excited to hear from all sorts of folks. This is a movement. We need folks to have the energy to back up these types of policies, because if not, special interest groups are going to fight back, and they often win.
Yeah, you mentioned that it would be super nice for the young ones to connect with you and also to come and serve and help you by providing information about how they feel surrounded by so much contamination. I think that would be key.
Definitely.
So do you have social, can people follow you in social media?
Yeah, of course. They can definitely follow me on social media at Manny Rutinel, MANNYRUTINEL. And I encourage y'all to also reach out to me through email. And what we need is people to show up for testimony. These bills make their way into let's say, the Energy and Environment Committee, and it's heard by a panel of legislators. And those legislators want to hear from the community. How is this or that affecting you personally? And they love to hear from people that are affected by these interests.
Thank you so much, Representative Rutinel, for sharing your insights and your perspectives with us today for the new bilingual publication, LaCiudad. From Colorado Community Media, I am Rosana Longo-Better. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosanna.